Today we're going to talk about photosynthesis, and you want to definitely make sure you have your notes out in front of you and you realize that we're just kind of skimming the surface here with our topic. So to kind of practice, you may want to watch the videos available that I have in Edpuzzle, or even look at any Bozeman or Crash Course videos. Know that those videos may go much more in depth than you are required to for this course. Photosynthesis, so the prefix photo means light, synthesis means to build. So our goal is to use light to build a molecule. And that molecule we're trying to build is glucose. Another name for photosynthesis is called autotrophic nutrition. So the ingredients or the reactants going into this process are sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. And the products, what's made or produced, would be oxygen and glucose. So this atomic shuffling of these different atoms here get just basically reshuffled and organized into oxygen and glucose. So just a review, that light's a form of energy that travels in waves, and when that wave or that light hits an object, that energy from those wavelengths is used, and that's what excites different electrons and helps photosynthesis get started. So if we take a look at where this happens, this is taking place in the chloroplast when we're talking about photosynthesis. And some terms to point out: the word dependent means it's needed, and independent means you don't need. And in photosynthesis, we're going to be using these terms to refer to light. Is light needed or is it not needed? When we take a look at where it starts, it's going to start in these thylakoids. These are these small, I said they look like junior mints, and there's stacks of them. And this is where the light-dependent reactions occur. And then the other part of photosynthesis are the light-independent, and that takes place in the stroma. The stroma is an open space between the thylakoid stacks. So the types of cells that we've been talking about that have chloroplasts are plant cells. So chloroplasts are only found in plant cells, not in animal cells. And when we take a look at inside of a chloroplast, and this is just a model to kind of show you what's happening, the light reactions are happening in all the stacks of the thylakoid membranes. Light strikes these stacks of thylakoids, and also with water, the product of oxygen is produced. And remember, our goal was to produce or synthesize energy in the form of sugar. But along the way, one of the things that's produced is oxygen. And that happens when this water molecule is split apart and oxygen is the product. And these hydrogen atoms are going to go on, and they're going to end up helping to cycle through the light-independent reactions. So notice here, I pointed out to the students that ATP is actually used in this process in our attempt to eventually make ATP. So again, here's another example of ATP being used to do the work of the cell. You'll notice the cycle ATP, once ATP is used, it has to get recycled in from ADP and adding a phosphate and get recycled again. NADPH is another high energy molecule. You don't need to worry about it at this point. So ATP helps the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is named after the person who discovered it. It's known in our course as the light-independent reactions. Sometimes you'll hear somebody call it the Calvin cycle. Sometimes they'll call it the dark reactions. If you watch the Crash Course video, he talks about the Calvin cycle and the discovery. In this part, it is important at this point that carbon dioxide is present. If it's not, then this process is not going to occur. Sugars are not going to be made. And notice just the general term sugars is used. It can create glucose. That glucose can be put together, form a disaccharide, form a polysaccharide like starch. So just in general, that term sugars is used here. So this takes some time to study this model, to take a look and say, okay, what reactants are used in the light-dependent reactions, what reactants are used in the light-independent reactions, and kind of memorizing what goes in when and where. And also another thing to think about is what happens if you increase the amount of carbon dioxide? Well, students in class said that that's going to increase the amount of sugars. What happens if you would eliminate the carbon dioxide? Well, that's going to greatly reduce, if not stop, the production of sugars. We also need to talk about how materials get into and out of a plant. So it's important to take a look at a leaf, and leaves have openings called stomates or stomata. So the top layer of a leaf usually has a waxy coating to prevent water loss. We usually pay attention to the palisade layer because that layer has most of the chloroplast where photosynthesis is going to take place. Other cells in the leaf have different jobs. There's two cells on each side of the stomate, which is stomate's the opening. These two cells' responsibility is to open and close the stomate. So that's what we have right here. What's the job of the guard cells? Guard cells open and close the stomate. And like I said, the stomate is an opening that allows materials to enter and exit the cell. So an open stomate would look like this, but a closed stomate would look like this. So what exactly is being exchanged? Well, we have water, and we have CO2, and we have oxygen. So the plant needs the gas CO2 so that can enter through the stomate. And one thing that the plant may actually lose is water and oxygen. But remember, the plant needs water too. So this is where the dilemma comes in. You have to make sure that the plant doesn't lose too much water while also letting the CO2 in. So students need to read up about transpiration and gas exchange. And you're going to be looking at a web page on It's Learning. It takes you to the Google site on transpiration. It has a diagram. The USGS explains transpiration in language that you guys should be able to understand. But even better is a paragraph that talks about transpiration and what's actually happening. And here's the questions restated that are right here in your packet. So after reading that, you should be able to answer these questions. I do want to point out that when we're talking about water coming up from the roots, we're talking about liquid water. But when water leaves plants, it leaves as a gas. And that's going to be it for photosynthesis. Next, we'll be learning about cellular respiration.